It was a Monday evening when everything I believed about my life came crashing down. I had just wrapped up a long day at work, the kind that leaves you exhausted but content. My job as a project manager at a software company kept me busy, but I liked it that way. It gave me a sense of purpose, of stability. I couldn't wait to get home to Sarah, my wife of 8 years. She had texted earlier in the day, "Made your favorite tonight, penne alla vodka. Can't wait to see you." I smiled at the message, her familiar warmth tugging at my heart. I pulled into the driveway, noticing her car parked neatly in the garage. But something else caught my eye. A dark blue Audi parked a little further down the street. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where you recognized most of the cars that frequented the area. This one didn't belong. Shaking it off, I stepped inside. The house was oddly quiet, except for the faint sound of music drifting from upstairs. A song we had danced to at our wedding. My pulse quickened, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was reminiscing, or maybe she just wanted to surprise me with a romantic dinner. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice echoing through the open-plan living room. No response. I set my briefcase down by the couch, loosening my tie. The delicious aroma of the promised penne alla vodka wafted from the kitchen, but the table wasn't set. The unease that had been gnawing at me grew sharper. Slowly, I climbed the stairs, the music getting louder with each step. Halfway up, I paused. Voices. One was hers, unmistakably Sarah's. The other was a man's, low and smooth. My breath hitched as my chest tightened. "Calm down, Nick." It could be anyone. But then I heard her laugh. That laugh, light, carefree, and full of warmth. A sound I hadn't heard in weeks, maybe months. And it wasn't meant for me. The bedroom door was ajar. Through the sliver, I saw movement. My stomach churned as I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. Sarah sat on the edge of our bed, her face alight with a glow I hadn't seen in ages. Her hands rested on a man's shoulders, their proximity far too intimate for comfort. He leaned in, whispering something that made her throw her head back in laughter, her golden hair cascading like a curtain behind her. I froze. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as the reality of what I was seeing sank in. My wife, my Sarah, sharing a moment with a stranger in the very space that had once been a sanctuary for us. The plane tickets to Maui tucked in my pocket, meant to be an anniversary surprise, felt like a cruel joke. I didn't burst in. Not yet. I didn't trust myself to speak without breaking. Instead, I backed away, careful not to make a sound. My hands shook as I reached for my phone and began recording. I needed proof, not just for any confrontation that might follow, but for myself, to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. The video captured everything, their laughter, the way he brushed a strand of hair from her face, the way her fingers lingered on his arm. Enough. I left the house, my head spinning. Sitting in my car, I replayed the video, each frame slicing deeper into my chest. Then I scrolled through my phone's messages, searching for answers in weeks of mundane exchanges with Sarah. Grocery lists, reminders about parent-teacher meetings, the occasional "I love you." All lies. How long had this been going on? How many nights had I stayed late at the office, thinking I was building a future for us, while she was tearing it apart? My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, "Dinner's ready. Hurry home, babe." I stared at the screen, the words mocking me. The audacity, the casual deceit, as if nothing had happened. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, wanting to type 100 things at once. Demands for answers, accusations, curses. Instead, I simply wrote, "Running late. Don't wait up." But I wasn't going to let this slide. Not by a long shot. I drove around aimlessly for hours, the streets blurring together as my mind raced. Memories of our life together played on a cruel loop. The way she had clung to me during our first dance, whispering promises of forever. The mornings spent curled up on the couch, laughing at inside jokes no one else would understand. The nights when she'd fall asleep in my arms, her breath soft against my chest. All of it felt tainted now, overshadowed by the image of her with him. Finally, I parked at a diner on the edge of town. I sat in a corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. I needed a plan. Confronting her outright wouldn't be enough. She'd deny it, spin some story about how it was innocent, that I was overreacting. No, I needed more. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I called in sick and began laying the groundwork. I ordered a DNA test kit online. If Sarah had been lying about this, who's to say she hadn't lied about other things? Our two kids, Lila and Ben, had always felt like the center of my universe. But now, a nagging doubt had crept in, one that I couldn't shake. I also purchased a phone cloning device, small surveillance cameras, and a few voice recorders. If there was more to this, I would uncover every sordid detail. And when I had everything I needed, I would confront her. Not as the man she had betrayed, but as someone armed with the truth, ready to reclaim the life she had tried to destroy. I spent the next 2 days moving through my life on autopilot. At work, my assistant remarked that I seemed unusually quiet, but I waved it off, claiming exhaustion from a recent project. Inside, though, I was churning. Every idle moment, every free second, I found myself replaying the scene in the bedroom. Every time, the emotions hit me anew: betrayal, anger, sadness, and then clarity. I needed to know everything. When the DNA test kit arrived, I almost hesitated. It sat on my desk, unopened, the sleek white box daring me to confront the possibility that my children might not be mine. Lila's infectious giggle, Ben's uncanny ability to build anything with Legos. They were my kids, weren't they? But Sarah's betrayal had already planted a seed of doubt. If she could lie to my face for who knows how long, what else had she hidden from me? I opened the kit and read the instructions carefully. That evening, as I tucked Lila and Ben into bed, I collected cheek swabs from both of them. I told them it was for a fun science project and promised to show them the results when they came back. They giggled, oblivious to the storm brewing behind my smile. I packaged the samples, added my own swab, and mailed them off. The website promised results in 7 to 10 business days. 7 to 10 days of torment, I thought bitterly. While waiting for the DNA results, I turned my attention to Sarah's phone. The cloning device was surprisingly easy to set up. I waited until she was in the shower, her phone charging on the nightstand, and quickly connected the cloning device. Within minutes, I had full access to her calls, texts, emails, and even her social media accounts. I felt a pang of guilt. Despite everything, part of me still didn't want to find proof of her deceit. But it was too late to turn back. As I scrolled through her texts, nothing immediately jumped out. There were no overtly romantic messages, no saved contacts with suspicious nicknames. Just mundane conversations with her friends, co-workers, and a few texts from me. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe it really had been innocent. But then I found it. Buried in her deleted messages was a conversation thread with someone saved as Evan, work. It started innocently enough, a work-related question about scheduling a meeting. But as I scrolled further, the tone shifted. Sarah, last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about it. Evan, you looked stunning. Can't wait to see you again. Friday? Sarah, I'll make something up. Nick thinks I'm going out with Melissa. I stopped breathing for a moment, the weight of those words sinking in. My mind raced. Melissa, her supposed best friend, was the cover? Did Melissa know? Were they all in on this? My jaw tightened as I read on. As furious as I was at Sarah, something about Evan didn't sit right. His messages were too polished, too perfect, like they were crafted to elicit a reaction. Curious, I did a reverse search on his phone number using an online tool. The results sent a chill down my spine. The number didn't belong to an Evan. It was registered to a private investigator named Jonathan Baker. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Why would Sarah be texting a private investigator? Was she suspicious of me? Had she hired someone to follow me? My first thought was absurd. Sarah wasn't the suspicious type. If anything, she was too trusting, or so I'd thought. But the longer I stared at the screen, the more questions arose. The next clue came when I scoured her emails. Among her online receipts for groceries and shopping sprees, I found a wire transfer confirmation to an unfamiliar account. The amount, $15,000, was significant enough to catch my attention. The account belonged to someone named Angela Reyes. A quick search revealed no connection to Sarah, at least not one I could easily find. The transfer had been made 3 weeks ago, around the time Sarah's behavior had started to change. It was as if she had been testing the waters, gauging how far she could push boundaries without me noticing. What was the money for? Who was Angela Reyes? Unsure of my next move, I decided to confide in my best friend, Eric. Eric was a lawyer, practical, methodical, and above all, discreet. If anyone could help me untangle this web, it was him. When I showed him the evidence, the video, the messages, the wire transfer, he frowned deeply. This isn't just an affair, Nick. This feels bigger, more calculated. You think she's planning something? I asked, dread creeping into my voice. He leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. Could be anything. Divorce prep? Maybe? But $15,000? That's not typical for a PI. And why would she need one if she's the one cheating? Something doesn't add up. Eric suggested hiring my own investigator to dig deeper into Sarah's activities. He also advised me to quietly pull our financial records to see if there were other discrepancies. If she's planning to blindside you, you need to be ready, he warned. By the weekend, I had access to nearly every corner of Sarah's digital life. The clone phone gave me insight into her daily conversations. The cameras I'd installed revealed nothing suspicious, yet. But the financial records? They were a treasure trove. There were more wire transfers, smaller amounts this time, but frequent. Each one went to different accounts, all under unfamiliar names. The total added up to nearly $50,000 over the past 6 months. This wasn't just an affair. It was a scheme. What was Sarah hiding? And why was she funneling money to strangers? The DNA results arrived on a Monday morning. My stomach churned as I opened the envelope, scanning the paper for confirmation of what I feared most. But the results were surprising. Lila and Ben were both mine. Relief swept over me, but it was short-lived. The knowledge that they were my children didn't erase the betrayal or the unanswered questions. Why was Sarah paying off strangers? Why was she messaging a man masquerading as a private investigator? And most importantly, how much deeper did this go? One thing was clear. I wasn't just dealing with infidelity. I was standing on the edge of a conspiracy, one that threatened to unravel everything I thought I knew about my wife and my life. The relief of knowing Lila and Ben were my children quickly gave way to an even darker reality. Sarah wasn't just unfaithful. She was hiding something bigger, something more insidious. I had proof of an affair, or at least what looked like one. But the wire transfers, the connection to a private investigator, and the cryptic financial trail pointed to something far more calculated. My focus shifted. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about unraveling a plot. Eric put me in touch with a private investigator, a woman named Mallory Kane. She wasn't the trench coat and fedora type, but instead exuded quiet confidence, with sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through me. I laid out everything: the clone phone data, the wire transfers, and my growing suspicions. Mallory listened intently, taking notes without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back and crossed her arms. "Your wife is playing a long game," she said. "The question is, what's her endgame?" "I was hoping you could tell me that," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "First things first," she said. "I'll dig into this Angela Reyes and the accounts she's sending money to. If we're lucky, they'll lead to something concrete. In the meantime, keep playing the part of the clueless husband. Don't tip her off." That part was easier said than done. 2 days later, Mallory called with her first update. "Angela Reyes is a ghost," she said. "No social media presence, no credit history, no property records. The name is either an alias or belongs to someone off the grid. But the accounts the money's going to? They're connected to a shell company based in Delaware." "What kind of company?" I asked, pacing my office. "It's listed as a consulting firm, but that's just a front. The account has ties to several offshore bank accounts: Cayman Islands, Panama, Luxembourg. Whoever owns it knows how to cover their tracks." I felt the room spin. Offshore accounts? Shell companies? What the hell was Sarah involved in? "And there's more," Mallory added. I pulled phone records for the number listed as Evan. "It's a burner. Disposable. And it hasn't just been texting your wife. It's been calling numbers linked to the same shell company. My guess? Whoever this is, they're coordinating something. I need more time to connect the dots. The next night, while Sarah was out meeting Melissa for drinks, I decided to search the house more thoroughly. It was risky. If she came home early, I'd have no explanation for why I was rifling through her things. But I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that the answers were closer than I realized. I started in her closet, combing through every shelf and drawer. Nothing unusual. Then I spotted it, a loose floorboard near the back. My heart pounded as I pried it up, revealing a small steel safe embedded in the floor. It was locked. Frustrated but determined, I took photos of the safe and sent them to Mallory. "Any idea how to open this?" I asked when she called back. "Leave it to me," she said. "I know a guy." 3 days later, Mallory delivered another bombshell. The shell company's account made a payment to a storage facility in the city. It's a Dropbox operation, cash only, no ID required. My guess is it's being used to move or store something valuable. What should I do? I asked. "I'll stake it out," Mallory said. "If anyone shows up, we'll know more." The next evening, Mallory called from her car, parked near the storage facility. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Your wife just walked in." "What?" I almost dropped the phone. "What is she doing there?" "Hard to say. She went in with a bag and came out empty-handed. But here's the kicker. She wasn't alone. A man was with her. Mid-40s, dark hair, suit and tie. Definitely not Evan, unless he's had a serious makeover. Did you get a picture?" I asked. "Better," she said. I followed them. Mallory trailed them to a hotel downtown, where they checked in under fake names. "She's not just cheating, Nick. She's working with this guy. Whatever this is, they're in it together." Mallory's contact managed to crack the safe the next day. Inside were stacks of cash, several fake IDs, including one with Sarah's photo and a different name, and a flash drive. The flash drive was encrypted, but Mallory knew someone who could decrypt it. When she called back, her voice was tense. "Nick, you're sitting on a time bomb. The drive contains transaction records, wire transfers, offshore accounts, and something that looks like insider trading data. Your wife isn't just cheating. She's part of a scheme to funnel stolen money." My mind reeled. "You're saying she's, what? Laundering money?" "Looks like it," Mallory said. "And here's the kicker. The names on these files? Some of them belong to your company's board members." It all began to make sense. Sarah's affair wasn't just personal, it was professional. The man from the hotel, the burner phone, the offshore accounts, it all tied back to a financial conspiracy involving my company. And Sarah wasn't just a pawn, she was a key player. But why? And how deeply was she involved? I knew one thing. I couldn't confront her yet. Not without more evidence, not without a plan. Mallory suggested laying low while she dug deeper. "Whatever you do, don't let her know you're onto her," she warned. That night, as I lay awake, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. You're in over your head. Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m., 14th Street Cafe." I showed it to Mallory the next morning. "Think it's from her?" I asked. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe it's someone else involved in this mess. Either way, you should go. But don't go alone." At 3 p.m. sharp, I walked into the cafe. Mallory was parked nearby, ready to intervene if things got dangerous. I scanned the room, my heart pounding, until my eyes landed on a familiar face. It wasn't Sarah. It was my boss. The sight of my boss, David Whitaker, sitting in a corner booth with his hands folded neatly on the table, hit me like a punch to the gut. He looked up and met my eyes, his expression unreadable. The man I'd worked under for nearly a decade, the one who had given me the opportunity to climb the corporate ladder, was now somehow tangled in my wife's web of deceit. I approached cautiously, my mind racing. What was he doing here? What did he know? As I slid into the booth opposite him, he offered a tight smile. "Nick," he said, his voice calm, almost friendly. "Thanks for coming." "I didn't know I had much of a choice," I replied, my tone cold. "What's this about?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I know about the safe. And the flash drive." My blood ran cold. Mallory had assured me that the break-in was clean, that no one would suspect a thing. How could he know? "Relax," he said, as if reading my thoughts. I'm not here to make threats. I'm here to give you a warning. Warning about what? I asked, my fists clenching under the table. About Sarah, he said, leaning back, and about the people she's working with. According to David, Sarah had been involved in a scheme orchestrated by a shadowy network of insiders at my company. They were using offshore accounts and shell companies to launder money and funnel profits from illegal trades. Sarah wasn't just laundering funds. She was also acting as a liaison, connecting key players and keeping the operation running smoothly. But why her? I demanded, struggling to keep my voice down. She's not exactly a financial mastermind. She didn't start this, David said, but she's good at earning trust. People like her, underestimate her. That's what makes her valuable. He paused, his eyes narrowing. She's been using you, Nick. Her connections to you gave her access to information, names, projects, upcoming deals. Information that's worth a lot of money to the right people. The realization hit me like a freight train. Sarah hadn't just betrayed me romantically. She had been mining my life for intel, turning my career and trust into tools for her schemes. After David left, I sat in the cafe, my coffee untouched, my mind spinning. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore. This was about everyone who had conspired to use me, manipulate me, and betray me. I wasn't going to confront Sarah, not yet. Instead, I would dismantle everything she had built. I would tear her world apart, brick by brick, and leave her to face the ruins. That night, I called Mallory and laid out a plan. I want to know everything, every player, every account, every move they've made. And then I want to burn it all down. Mallory didn't hesitate. If that's what you want, I'll need more resources. And we'll have to move fast before they catch wind. Do it, I said. Money isn't an issue. The first step was baiting Sarah into revealing more. I decided to play the doting husband, pretending I hadn't seen or heard anything. I booked a weekend getaway for us at a luxury resort, an attempt to reignite the spark in our marriage. She was surprised, even hesitant, but eventually agreed. During the trip, I planted subtle questions about her work, her friends, and her recent activities. I listened carefully, not just to what she said, but to what she didn't. Every vague answer, every nervous laugh, added to my mental dossier. Meanwhile, Mallory was digging deeper. She uncovered more transfers, more shell companies, and a pattern of coded communication between Sarah and several other players. One of them was Angela Reyes, who Mallory discovered wasn't a ghost after all. She was a key figure in the laundering network, operating under multiple aliases. Then came the breakthrough. Mallory intercepted an email exchange between Sarah and one of her accomplices, detailing a drop scheduled for the following week. Sarah would be meeting someone at a high-end restaurant downtown to exchange another flash drive, this one containing encrypted account details. Let her do the drop, Mallory advised. We'll intercept it afterward and see what they're hiding. But I had a different idea. No, I said. I'll do the drop. Mallory was skeptical but eventually agreed, helping me prepare. On the night of the meeting, I showed up early, dressed in a suit and carrying a briefcase identical to Sarah's. When she arrived and stepped into the private dining room, I intercepted her at the door. Change of plans, I said, handing her a fake flash drive. Her eyes widened in shock, but I kept my expression calm. Just trust me. Before she could protest, I walked past her into the dining room and handed the briefcase to her contact, a wiry man in his 50s with sharp eyes. He accepted it without question, and I left without a word. The real flash drive, which I had swapped out earlier, revealed everything: names, dates, account numbers, and evidence tying Sarah and her network to a web of financial crimes. I shared the information with Mallory, who passed it along to her own contacts in law enforcement. Within days, the dominoes began to fall. Several of Sarah's accomplices were arrested, including Angela Reyes. News of the investigation hit the media, and whispers of corruption began to spread through my company. Sarah, oblivious to my role in the takedown, came home one evening visibly shaken. Something's wrong, she said. People are getting arrested. I think someone's betrayed us. I looked at her, my face carefully neutral. What do you mean? I asked, feigning concern. I don't know, she said, pacing the living room, but I need to figure it out before it's too late. As Sarah scrambled to cover her tracks, I made my final move. I had been working with Mallory to secure my own protection, ensuring that none of Sarah's mess could be traced back to me. I'd also been quietly liquidating joint assets, transferring funds into a separate account she couldn't touch. When the authorities finally came for her, I was ready. As the agents led her away in handcuffs, she looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. "Nick," she whispered, "you have to help me. Please." I didn't say a word. Instead, I handed her a single piece of paper, the divorce papers I'd filed the day before. "Goodbye, Sarah," I said, my voice cold. "You should have chosen your partners more carefully." As they took her away, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had lost so much, my trust, my marriage, my sense of stability, but I had reclaimed something far more important, my power. And now, I was ready to rebuild my life, on my terms, and with no shadows looming over me. With Sarah out of the picture, I should have felt relief, maybe even closure. But instead, a new kind of fire burned inside me, a thirst for complete, calculated revenge. Sarah had been the face of the betrayal, but the web of deception extended far beyond her. She was a pawn, albeit a willing one, in a larger conspiracy that had used me as leverage. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I spent weeks with Mallory dissecting every name and connection tied to the flash drive. It revealed not only Sarah's direct accomplices, but also influential figures at my company and beyond. These people had gambled with others' lives, laundered money, and traded in secrets. Sarah's arrest had rattled their cages, but they weren't panicking. They were regrouping. "They'll cut their losses and find another way," Mallory warned. "People like this don't just vanish." "They don't need to vanish," I said. "I'm going to destroy them." We started with David Whitaker. As my boss and one of the ringleaders, he'd positioned himself as untouchable, always staying one step removed from the actual crimes. But the flash drive contained enough breadcrumbs to link him to offshore accounts and key meetings with Sarah's network. "David's the keystone," Mallory said. "Take him down, and the rest of the structure collapses." Using the flash drive's data, Mallory and I set up a sting operation. I leveraged my connections at work to get close to David without raising suspicion. At the same time, I fed him small pieces of misinformation, fake leads about investigations, bogus intel about potential whistleblowers. It was all designed to make him paranoid and reckless. Sure enough, David started making mistakes. He moved money between accounts, met with shadowy contacts, and left a trail that Mallory meticulously documented. But I wasn't done. I wanted him to suffer. The key to David's downfall came in the form of an anonymous whistleblower, a fictional character Mallory and I created. Through encrypted emails and carefully planted rumors, we convinced David that someone inside the company was feeding information to law enforcement. David panicked. He started throwing his underlings under the bus, implicating several key players in the process. Each name he revealed became another piece of ammunition for us. With the evidence piling up, I arranged a meeting with David, claiming I needed his advice on a sensitive matter. We met at a private club he frequented, a place he believed was secure. I brought a thick folder filled with doctored documents that appeared to incriminate him further. "I think you should see this," I said, sliding the folder across the table. David's face turned pale as he flipped through the pages. "Where did you get this?" "I'm not the only one asking questions," I said, feigning concern. "These were left on my desk this morning. Someone knows about the offshore accounts." He wiped his brow, his confidence unraveling. This could ruin everything." "It already has," I said, leaning in. "You might want to get ahead of it." The final blow came a week later, during an emergency board meeting. Mallory had worked her magic, ensuring that the evidence against David would land directly on the desks of the company's top executives and the SEC. As I sat in the boardroom, feigning ignorance, federal agents stormed in and arrested David on charges of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The fallout was immediate. The company's stock plummeted, several other executives were implicated, and whispers of a full-scale criminal investigation spread like wildfire. My name, however, remained untouched. I had positioned myself as a whistleblower, cooperating fully with investigators while keeping my own hands clean. With David out of the picture, I turned my attention back to Sarah. Even from jail, she was trying to manipulate the narrative, claiming she was a victim of circumstance. Her lawyer reached out, offering a plea deal if I would testify on her behalf. I refused. Instead, I used the remaining data on the flash drive to expose every lie she had told during our marriage. I contacted old friends, neighbors, even her family, sharing what I'd uncovered. Slowly but surely, the image she had built for herself of a loving wife and devoted mother crumbled. Her parents, horrified by the revelations, disowned her. Friends stopped visiting. Even her lawyer began distancing himself. She was utterly alone. The last piece of my revenge was the most personal. I had discovered an email exchange between Sarah and her accomplices, detailing plans to siphon money from our joint accounts before her arrest. They hadn't anticipated how quickly I'd acted to secure our finances. Instead of draining the accounts, Sarah found herself with nothing, not a dime to her name. I visited her in jail one last time, more out of curiosity than closure. She looked gaunt, her once vibrant confidence replaced by a hollow desperation. "Why, Sarah?" I asked. "Why throw everything away?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked down, her hands trembling. For the first time, I saw her for what she truly was, a broken, selfish person who had underestimated me. As I stood to leave, I said, "I hope it was worth it." With Sarah and David gone, I was finally free to rebuild my life. Mallory became more than just an ally during the process. She became a friend, someone who reminded me that trust could be earned again. I sold the house, moved to a new city, and started over with my kids. Lila and Ben never knew the full extent of what had happened, and I intended to keep it that way. They deserved better. As for the company, it survived the scandal but emerged smaller and weaker. I left on my terms, taking a generous severance package and investing it in ventures I believed in. In the end, revenge wasn't just about getting even. It was about reclaiming control over my life. And as I stood on the balcony of my new home, watching the sunrise with a cup of coffee in hand, I realized I had finally found peace. And that's how it ended. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts below. Tell us, what would you have done in their shoes?